because it's a comfort feeling, Ankur.
Yes.
When I'm using my limbic system, I'm using 1/10 of energy than compared to prefrontal. My body is
Yes.
very
Yes.
happy using the limbic system.
Yes.
That is all the positive psychology is. It's shifting from a fear to curiosity, Ankur. I am relating my identity with my performance, right? And if I'm not able to achieve, how will I judge myself? A failure in most of the cases. Anyone who has worked for more than 10 to 15 years in an industry, they attach their identity very strongly with the role. And in the coaching, we work on it. We work on the who part of it, so that your
Got
identity becomes so strong, it does not get overshadowed by the what part of it, Ankur. I think the legendary leaders are those who identify their unique capability
yeah.
and build upon them.
Yeah.
Using limbic, I'm reacting. Using prefrontal cortex, I'm responding.
Got it. Got it.
So, and in our workshop, the workshop which I do, we do talk about this. We give some ways and methods to the participants to start using more of the prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
And it starts with being aware that, okay, am I using limbic now? Am I using prefrontal now? That's the first step. And second, then building the muscle to build, start using more prefrontal.
So that's interesting. So you were saying that our instinct or way we operate generally in stressful situation or in a situation which may lead us to a burnout is excessive use of reactionary system and not an optimal use or sufficient use of the prefrontal or the thinking system or responding system, and that's where you work as a coach with in through education through your workshop or individually when you're working, that how do you are able to make this shift where you only use the respiratory system as and when required rather than being the primary mode of working.
You put it very well, Ankur, the way you link the use of limbic versus prefrontal to the burnout.
So that means it's not that limbic system is a bad system, it's just that it is being overused.
That's how because we have, it's a comfort feeling, Ankur.
Yes.
When I'm using my limbic system, I'm using 1/10 of energy than compared to prefrontal. My body is
Yes.
very
Yes.
happy using the limbic system.
Yes. So how does a positive psychology help leaders to stay grounded, especially when they're expected to stay ahead?
Yeah. And uh, and the positive psychology, I'll give you an analogy, Ankur.
Okay.
So the first time when we hear about, I'll again take up example of Gen AI because it's very prevalent, everyone can relate to it. We hear about Gen AI, we go back in our memory lane, we we pull out a file which is in the brain which says that, okay, when a new technology come, starting from the industrial era, 1800s, right, a
Yes.
disruption happened, jobs goes, right, and so what I'm doing, I quickly use my limbic system, I take the fear file out of my brain,
Ah, okay.
right, so the fear factor is coming. Now if I can change this fear factor into curiosity, wow, this Gen AI seems a fabulous technology. It can help me focus more on the activity which where I can add more value. Let me learn. So I'm changing my fear into, now I'm not going back into my the fear file in the brain which is coming from the previous learning and experience. I'm looking forward, I'm exploring the opportunity, how I can use this tool, this technology which is there with me in very simple terms.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And in your coaching practice, what are some of the subtle emotional and behavior signs that you've noticed that leaders often overlook until it's too late?
Yeah, good. Very good question, Ankur. And what's really complicated here is that un- the signs which we see or the symptoms which we see does not directly relate to what is underlying factor for it, or what's the underlying cause for it. And that's where the coaching comes into picture. So I have worked with a founder of a startup. They, the founder started around 10-15 years back in smaller way, family business, and they grew over the year, have a team of around 1,000 people, and then they were not able to scale it further. So when the first discussion happened, the first session, the problem which the founder brought that, okay, I want to scale the business, I want to know how I can scale it. But when we had further discussion, it came up that the founder was not ready to commit to the plan for scaling because of the differences with the partners. The partners were not ready to scale at that. So, which seems like a process issue, actually had an underlying difference between the partners.
Interesting. And then many leaders uh, tie their identity to performance. In times of change. How does that amplify the burnout risk when?
Yeah, and it's not only for the leaders, Ankur. Interestingly, good that you brought it up. I typically work with the senior professionals, senior leaders. So anyone who has worked for more than 10 to 15 years in an industry, they attach their identity very strongly with the role,
Okay.
firstly. So, and that also make a career switch very difficult, Ankur. So I do work with the leaders who want to transition from one career to other career, one industry to other industry. They are not able to do because they've got their identity with the current role, current industry. They are
Okay.
not ready to let it go. So now coming to your question, I just wanted to set that, okay, this is not only in leaders but all professionals see this
Okay.
kind
Yes.
of behavior. Now
Yes.
coming to leaders. Yeah, and just to add to that also, Ankur, and I think it's a very difficult to crack. There's no straight answer to it. It's a complex situation, and that's why we keep on discussing this even after so many years, and we will keep on discussing this. See, there are multiple factors. I have seen leaders who take a stand that, okay, I'm not going to commit to this target because this does not seem reasonable to me and my organization.
Got it.
And they're ready to face the consequences. So I've
Yeah.
worked even in the Gen AI. I'm fortunate to work with leaders who say Gen AI 40% cannot happen across the board,
Yeah. Okay.
and then they set the right target. So these are the leaders who are creating the right environment for the organization, which will not lead to burnout. Now going back to those 3 points, Ankur, of burnout: exhaustion, and cynicism to environment, and cynicism for self. So the last point, if I am relating my identity with my performance, right? And if I'm not able to achieve, how will I judge myself? A failure in most of the cases?
It's interesting, because this is the same, like a reframing, which we use in health coaching. That let's say, someone is having a weight issue. So many of us, or many of the people I work with or see around, this they use term that I am overweight instead of saying that I am having a weight issue. I am a diabetic patient, or I am diabetic, versus saying I am having high blood sugar. So I think it's very very similar what you are saying, that you attach your identity to uh, to the responsibility you have, and then that sense becomes like our ingrained personality, and that is probably you're saying that leads to or that amplifies the burnout risk.
In coaching, we say we address more the who part of it. and less the what part of it. So what you were just now explaining, Ankur, right? Now the challenge is what I do has a consequence on who I am. We cannot
True,
deny it, Ankur,
true, true,
right?
true.
So it could be financial, it could be status, it could be social, it could be emotional. So it's very difficult to attach the who and what part of it. But if we can get some clarity on that this is who I am, this is my identity, then in the coaching we work on it. We work on the who part of it so that your
Got it.
identity becomes so strong it does not get overshadowed by the what part of it, Ankur. So, Ankur, and I actually relate it to coaching itself. And
Okay.
right, as a coach, I'm a coach. That's my identity. As a coach, I'll provide the space to the client. I'll support in their feelings or their ideas. The moment I attach the outcome of the session with who I am, I'll start becoming judging. My focus would be to solve the problem for the client, which might not serve him or her, because that would be my solution. Yeah.
So that means it's uh, one of the first or the key step is to providing that non-judgmental space where you are able to express, and then you go deeper to unravel what is actually happening before you are able to then bring that into awareness, or bring awareness the real identity of that person, which is beyond far wider, deeper than just limited to that responsibility in very very.
Perfectly. I think you summarized that very well beyond what his role is.
Yeah.
So, and if we take it from a leader perspective or a professional perspective, right? So I'm yes, I'm doing a role of that professional or leader in industry, but I'm beyond that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And let's take one example what we have been discussing as a leader. While we associate the metrics, the profitability, the bottom line with the CXO, right? But that leader is equally responsible for creating the environment where the, the employees do not burn out.
Sure, sure.
And I think that's what it
and
is.
and that is very interesting, that everyone has their own unique identity. It's not otherwise, if there was a formula, then everyone would be same, but everyone has a unique identity which they probably leverage in their leadership.
Some
So
of them do.
yes.
Some of the I think the legendary leaders are those who identify their unique capability
Yeah.
and build upon them.
Yes, yes, yes. That's interesting.